The stars trembled as the Imperial fleet entered human space. Their ships were so many that they blotted out starlight, turning night into shadow. Whole civilizations had fallen to this armada before. They were known as the unstoppable wave, and wherever they went, resistance died. Each ship was a fortress. Some carried weapons large enough to crack a planet's crust. Others could release firestorms across an entire atmosphere. Together, they were destruction itself. The commanders of the Empire stood at their control stations, proud and certain. To them, this was not a battle. It was an execution. Their target was Earth. The Empire had crushed hundreds of worlds, yet they had never faced Earth before. They had heard whispers, rumors of a world that did not bow, but no one believed such stories. Earth was considered primitive, a small planet at the edge of the galaxy. The commanders laughed as their fleets advanced. Still, something was wrong. The first scouts had gone silent. Their signals were gone, cut clean as if swallowed by the void. No wreckage, no distress call, nothing. The Empire dismissed it as faulty equipment, but the silence left a scar of doubt. For the veterans, it was not a mistake. It was a warning. And then Earth woke up. From the far side of the planet, long-forgotten satellites flickered back to life. Old space stations that had drifted cold and silent suddenly powered on. Strange patterns filled the void. The Imperial fleet scanned them, but their readings returned nothing. Shadows, blanks, gaps in data where light itself seemed to bend away. The commanders grew annoyed. Cheap tricks, they said. Primitive camouflage. But inside their fleet, whispers spread. Soldiers shifted in their seats. Pilots tightened their grips on controls. They all felt it. Something was watching. Earth said nothing. No plea for peace. No begging for mercy. Just silence. That silence was heavier than any threat. As the Imperial fleet pressed forward, their confidence began to waver. Their long-range sensors suddenly failed. Communication between ships started breaking. Voices of officers screamed across channels before vanishing. Some systems froze entirely. It was not an attack, they were simply being erased. The commander of the fleet smirked, refusing to admit fear. He stood tall, voice full of arrogance. They think they can frighten us with shadows? We are the Empire. No one dares to stand against us. But then it came. A voice. Calm. Cold. Everywhere. This is human space. Leave now and you will live. Stay and you will not. The message did not come from a ship. It came from everywhere at once. From every channel, every frequency, even from the static of broken comms. No matter how they tried to block it, the voice returned. The Empire roared with laughter. Empty words, shouted their leader. Earth will burn like all the others. Yet not everyone laughed. In the lower decks of those mighty warships, soldiers shifted uneasily. The veterans lowered their eyes, remembering old tales told in hushed voices, that humanity was different, that they were dangerous not because of numbers or weapons, but because of something no one could explain. The fleet prepared its attack. Gigantic cannons began to glow, charging with energy that could split continents. They aimed at the moon first, ready to make an example. Around them, silence stretched long and deep, but hidden in that silence, something moved. Dark shapes, massive and cold, slipped through the void. They made no sound. They carried no signal. Even the Empire's strongest scanners saw nothing. Yet the soldiers inside those alien ships felt their hearts race. The air grew heavy. The hunters were close. And for the first time in living memory, the mighty Empire stood face to face with a truth it had never known. It was no longer the predator. It was prey. The Imperial fleet floated in human space like a wall of iron and fire. Thousands of ships formed a fortress that stretched from one star to another. Their engines glowed. Their cannons hummed. Their commanders stood tall, certain of victory. From their bridges, they looked down at Earth as if it were prey waiting for slaughter. The order had been given. Soon the planet would burn. But then everything changed. Without warning, one of the lead battleships shook. At first, it was small, like turbulence in deep space. Officers rushed to controls, reporting errors. But before they could fix it, the ship split apart. A line of fire cut through its hull, slicing it clean in two. No explosion, no warning, just silence. The massive warship, proud and feared across the galaxy, died in less than a second. The fleet froze. Alarms screamed across channels. Commanders barked orders. Scanners activated. Thousands of eyes searched for the enemy. Yet, nothing appeared. No ship, no missile, no trace of what had struck them. It was as if the void itself had reached out and destroyed them. Panic spread among the crews. Soldiers who had laughed moments ago now whispered in fear. The younger officers shouted that it was impossible. The veterans, however, said nothing. They only stared into the darkness, their faces pale. The commander of the fleet snarled. "Find them," he roared. "No enemy hides from the Empire." But their scans showed only emptiness. Then it happened again. A second battleship, twice the size of the first, was preparing to fire its cannons. In an instant, its engines flared too bright, then collapsed. The ship crumpled inward, like a can crushed by invisible hands. The crew did not even have time to scream before it vanished into dust. 2 ships, gone. In moments, the Imperial fleet, the terror of the stars, had never lost ships like this, not even in full-scale wars. Whispers filled the channels. Some called it sorcery. Others called it impossible. But one word rose above all the noise. Humans. The commander tried to laugh, to sound fearless, but his voice cracked. He ordered the fleet to open fire. Thousands of cannons lit the dark, firing at random into the void. Beams of energy brighter than suns tore across space. Explosions erupted in every direction. The night sky became a storm of light and fury, but they hit nothing. The darkness swallowed every shot. And then, in the middle of that chaos, a voice returned. Calm, steady, everywhere at once. You were warned. The words froze them more than any weapon could. Soldiers gripped their controls with trembling hands. Even the commanders fell silent. And before anyone could reply, strike 3 came. This time it was not 1 ship. It was 5. 5 warships exploded together, torn apart as if some invisible blade had cut through them all at once. Their burning wreckage scattered across space like falling stars. The glow lit up the fleet, revealing faces of terror inside alien ships. No enemy was seen. No signal was traced. Only destruction. The commander's mask of pride shattered. He screamed for retreat, but it was already too late. The fleet had entered the hunter's cage. Around them, the void shifted. Out of the shadows, dark shapes began to appear. At first, they looked like pieces of the night sky. Then, slowly, they took form, massive warships, black as the void itself, moving without sound. Human ships. Not crude, not weak, not primitive. They were predators designed not for show, but for silence. Their armor bent light. Their weapons struck without warning. They were ghosts in the void. For the first time, the Empire realized the truth. Earth had never been defenseless. Earth had been waiting. The commander felt his throat dry. His empire had sent thousands of ships, proud and invincible. Yet here, in human space, they were nothing more than prey in a trap. Another voice came through, quiet but final. You should not have come. The Empire had wanted a war. But what they had found was a nightmare. And it had only just begun. The wreckage of shattered Imperial warships still burned in the void. Pieces of once proud giants drifted slowly, glowing like broken stars. Across the fleet, silence filled the comms. Soldiers who once roared with arrogance now sat frozen, staring at empty screens. No enemy ship had fired a visible shot. No weapon had been detected. Yet their proud fleet was dying ship by ship. The commander slammed his fist on the console. This is impossible. Find them. But his officers only exchanged frightened looks. Their scans showed nothing. Space was empty, yet their ships kept falling. Then it happened again. A destroyer at the far edge of the formation screamed across comms. We are hit. Something is inside. The signal cut off. The destroyer folded in on itself, crumbling like paper. In its place was only debris, spinning slowly into darkness. The Imperial fleet, the strongest force in the galaxy, was being hunted. And then, the voice came again. Calm, clear, everywhere. We gave you a chance. The commander's face went pale. He shouted back into the comms, desperate to sound strong. We are the Empire. Show yourselves. Fight us in the open. The answer was colder than the void. You are in human space. You will play by our rules. The words struck deeper than any weapon. Soldiers looked at one another in silence. Some gripped their chairs so tightly their knuckles turned white. Others whispered prayers. The veterans closed their eyes. They had seen wars, but never something like this. Then it happened. Across the fleet, systems failed. Screens flickered, lights died, engines cut out. Entire ships went blind, drifting powerless. Pilots shouted as controls froze beneath their hands. Weapons refused to fire. It was not destruction. It was domination. The Empire had always believed their technology was supreme, unmatched by any world. But here, in human space, their proud machines obeyed a different master. One officer trembled as he stared at his console. It's not malfunction. They're inside. They are controlling us. The commander roared in denial. No, it cannot be. But even as he shouted, the evidence was clear. Entire ships began moving without orders. Engines fired against their will. Weapons aimed at their own fleet. And then fire. One Imperial cruiser, overtaken by invisible hands, turned and opened fire on its allies. Beams of energy tore through armor, shredding warships. Explosions rippled across the formation. Commanders screamed orders, but no one listened. Their ships no longer belonged to them. The galaxy had feared the Empire for centuries. Yet now they were nothing but puppets, dancing on human strings. The commander's voice cracked. What kind of weapon is this? No one answered, because no one in the fleet had ever seen anything like it. The truth was simple. Humanity did not fight like the rest of the galaxy. While others built bigger ships and louder cannons, humans had built silence. They had built control. Their weapons were not meant to be seen. They were meant to end wars before they began. The fleet tried to retreat. Engines fired at maximum thrust, but space itself seemed to bend. Every path they chose closed with shadows. The human warships, black, silent, unseen, moved faster than the eye could follow, hurting them like prey. Then, another message came. You came to conquer. You will leave broken. If you leave at all. A shiver ran through every soldier. For the first time in their lives, they understood fear. The commander, sweating, tried to rally his crew. We are not finished. Fire everything. Fire at the planet. Show them our strength. But when he gave the order, nothing happened. His ship, his pride, his weapon, his throne, did not obey. The systems were already gone. And then, on the wide viewing screen, something appeared. Not a missile. Not a cannon. Not even a ship. It was a symbol. A glowing mark burned across their vision. Bright as a star. Pulsing with power. It was human-made, though none of the Empire could understand it. But they felt its meaning. It was a warning, a promise, and a declaration all in one. The Empire had always believed they were unchallenged rulers of the galaxy. But now, staring at that symbol, they realized a new truth. There was something far older, far stronger, and it lived on Earth. The first strike had shown them destruction. The second had shown them control. The third revealed the truth. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was the hunter. And the Empire had walked straight into their trap. The void burned with wreckage. Where once the Imperial fleet had stood proud, now broken pieces of steel drifted like corpses in the dark. The Empire's commanders, who had once called themselves lords of the galaxy, stared in disbelief at the chaos around them. Their strongest warships, giants that had crushed whole civilizations, were being torn apart like fragile toys. One commander gripped the railing of his bridge, his voice trembling. This is not war. This is slaughter. He was right. Human ships were still unseen. They had not revealed themselves fully. They moved like shadows, striking from nowhere, leaving no trace. The Empire fired blindly into the darkness, wasting their power, but their weapons found nothing. Every time the Imperials thought they were safe, another ship vanished. A massive dreadnought, proud and towering, suddenly imploded from within, collapsing into fire. A carrier with thousands of troops on board lit up in a single silent explosion. The crews did not even have time to scream. The Empire was falling apart. Voices screamed across the comms, mixing orders with fear. "Hold the line! We are surrounded! Protect the flagship!" But the more they fought, the faster they died. And then, finally, the shadows revealed themselves. At the edges of the battlefield, great shapes slid out of the void. At first, they looked like pieces of night sky breaking apart. Then they took form, vast warships, black as obsidian, edges sharp like blades, silent as death. Human ships. They did not glow with arrogance like Imperial ships. They did not carry banners or boast with size. They carried silence, and silence was more terrifying than any roar. The fleet of shadows closed in. For the first time, the Empire saw its predator. The human warships surrounded them in a ring of iron and darkness. Every exit closed. The mighty Imperial armada, used to chasing others, now realized it was trapped in a cage. Panic swept through their ranks. Some ships tried to break free, charging their engines to maximum speed. But the moment they moved, they were gone, erased by weapons too fast to see. Others tried to surrender, switching off their cannons, but even surrender could not guarantee safety. The Empire had thought itself invincible. But here, invincibility meant nothing. The human ships advanced slowly, silently. Every step closer was like a noose tightening around the Empire's throat. Then the voice came again. "This is the price of arrogance." The words echoed across every ship, across every trembling soul. Soldiers cried, commanders clenched their fists, and veterans bowed their heads. Another warship fell, then another, and another. The sky lit with fire, a funeral pyre for giants. The Imperial commander, desperate, tried to rally his forces. "We are not finished," he shouted. "Focus fire on one target. Break their line." The fleet obeyed. Hundreds of cannons turned toward a single human warship. Energy flared. Beams of light tore through space. For one brief second, it seemed they might strike back. But the human ship vanished. It slipped into the void as if it had never existed. The Imperial cannons hit only empty space. And then, from behind them, the same human ship reappeared. In one strike, it cut through 3 Imperial cruisers like glass. There was no hope left. The invincible fleet, the pride of the Empire, was crumbling faster than anyone could believe. Soldiers begged their commanders for escape. Officers refused to look at their screens, unable to watch their comrades vanish. The Empire, which had ruled the stars for centuries, was learning the taste of fear. The commander of the flagship fell silent. He could not hide the truth anymore. His empire had walked into a trap it could never escape. And humanity had only shown a fraction of its strength. One by one, the Imperial giants burned. Their wreckage turned into glowing scars across human space. No songs would be sung for them. No honor would remain. This was not just defeat. It was humiliation. And in the silence that followed, a legend was born. The galaxy would remember this night. The night the giants of the Empire fell. The night humanity proved it was not the prey, but the predator. The battlefield was silent except for drifting wreckage. Where once the Imperial fleet had stood like a wall of iron, now only fire and broken steel floated in the dark. Out of thousands of warships, only a fraction remained, and even they trembled like prey cornered by hunters. The human fleet did not chase. They did not roar with victory. They only stood in silence, black ships surrounding the enemy like shadows that never moved. Their calmness was more terrifying than any weapon. Inside the Imperial flagship, fear filled the air. The commander gripped the railing so hard his hands bled. Officers whispered. Soldiers stared blankly at broken screens. No one dared to speak the truth aloud. They were beaten. Then, the voice returned. It was not angry. It was not loud. It was steady, sharp, and final. You came uninvited. You came with fire and chains. This is your first and last lesson. The words froze every soldier. Even the commander bowed his head, though his pride fought against it. One of his officers whispered, almost begging, "Perhaps we should surrender." The commander wanted to roar in rage, but the truth choked him. He could see it now. The empire, once feared across the stars, had been reduced to a trembling child in front of Earth. The humans spoke again. "We do not seek your empire. We do not seek your thrones. We do not seek your worlds. But understand this, whoever enters human space with war will never leave whole." The words carried across every ship, sinking deep into every heart. It was not just a warning to the empire. It was a message for the entire galaxy. The commander finally broke. His voice cracked as he ordered retreat. "Turn us around. Take us home." But escape was not simple. The human ships moved, slowly parting, opening a single narrow path. The survivors realized what it meant. They were being allowed to leave, but only because humanity wanted them to. Shame filled the air of every Imperial ship. Soldiers who once carried pride in their empire now lowered their heads. They were not survivors. They were messengers, and they knew what message they had to carry back. The fleet limped forward, passing through the silent wall of human warships. No one fired. No one moved. The black ships simply watched, their weapons ready, their presence heavier than any chain. As the Imperials passed, many felt their hearts break. They had lived their lives believing no power could rival the Empire. Yet here, in the cold silence of human space, they had been reminded that arrogance always ends in ruin. When the last Imperial ship crossed the border, the humans sent one final message. "Tell your masters this was mercy. Next time there will be none." The survivors said nothing. They could not. Their throats were dry, their pride shattered. Slowly, the Imperial fleet jumped away, leaving behind only the wreckage of thousands of destroyed ships. And the galaxy, watching from far away, shivered. Rumors spread faster than light. Traders whispered that the Empire had been defeated. Smugglers told tales of human ships that moved like shadows. Soldiers in distant worlds spoke of a voice that cut through every channel, declaring Earth untouchable. The story changed with every retelling, but one truth remained the same. Humanity had stood against the Empire, and the Empire had lost. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt something it had not felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that the Empire was not invincible. Hope that one small world could rise against giants and win. But for the Empire itself, the feeling was not hope. It was fear. The mighty fleet they had sent had returned broken. Their war banners had been torn apart. Their soldiers carried not glory, but terror. And the commanders of the Empire now faced a question they had never asked before. What if humanity was stronger than them? The galaxy had received its warning. Earth did not want to conquer. Earth did not want to rule. But if anyone came with chains and fire, humanity would answer, and the answer would be death. The broken fleet limped home like wounded beasts. Out of thousands of warships, only a handful had survived. Their hulls were scarred, their weapons melted, their soldiers hollow-eyed with terror. When the Imperial capital first saw them arrive, there was no celebration, no cheers, no proud songs, only silence. The people stared at the ruined ships and whispered in disbelief. The fleet that had conquered entire civilizations had returned in shame. In the grand hall of the Empire, the rulers demanded answers. The surviving commander stood before them, his armor scorched, his voice weak. He spoke of shadows in the void. He spoke of ships that could not be seen. He spoke of weapons that did not fire but controlled. The hall erupted in outrage. Some accused him of cowardice. Others said he was lying. But those who looked into his eyes saw the truth. His pride was gone. His spirit was broken. And his words spread across the Empire like wildfire. Soldiers whispered it in their barracks. Merchants murmured it in markets. Prisoners repeated it in cells. A single phrase carried fear into every corner of the empire. Earth is not prey. Earth is predator. First, many laughed. How could one small world defeat the might of the empire? But laughter faded quickly. The evidence was undeniable. Wreckage that floated in human space, fleets that had vanished without trace, commanders who returned pale with fear. Soon, the galaxy began to change. Traders who once dreamed of plundering human systems now canceled their voyages. Smugglers who crossed borders for profit turned back. Even rival empires, who had always feared the Imperial fleet, now whispered cautiously about Earth. But inside the empire, fear grew into something worse, doubt. The empire had ruled for centuries by spreading terror. Their war banners were enough to make entire worlds surrender without a fight. But now that terror was cracked. The story of their defeat spread faster than their lies could cover it. One senator in the Great Council dared to speak aloud what others only thought. If Earth can destroy our fleets in moments, what will happen if they come for us? The room fell silent. No one answered, because deep down they all feared the same. The Emperor himself sat on his throne, staring at the broken commander. He wanted to roar, to punish, to erase this humiliation. But for the first time, even he felt the weight of uncertainty. He remembered the old stories. Long ago, whispers had reached the empire of a species that did not kneel. A species that learned too quickly, fought too fiercely, and never forgot. The empire had ignored those stories. Now, they wondered if those whispers had always been about humanity. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, fear turned into respect. Small colonies spoke the name of Earth with reverence. Rebellions rose in distant worlds, fueled by the hope that the empire was no longer unshakable. Even the strongest empires watched carefully, wondering if alliances with Earth might one day be wiser than enmity. And in every dark room, every council chamber, one question echoed. Was humanity the beginning of the end of the empire? The surviving soldiers of the fleet refused to speak further. Many drank themselves into silence. Some abandoned their posts, and a few never left their ships again, haunted by the memory of a voice that whispered through every channel. This is human space. You should not have come. That voice lived in their nightmares. The empire tried to rebuild its pride, sending new fleets to patrol the stars. But even these patrols moved carefully, avoiding the border of human space. None dared cross it again. The galaxy watched with wide eyes. The unshakable throne of the empire had begun to tremble. The mighty rulers who once conquered without fear now looked over their shoulders, wondering if shadows were watching. And those shadows had a name: Earth. The stars carried stories. Some were true, many were lies, but all spread faster than light. After the battle in human space, one story rose above all others. It was whispered by traders, sung in secret taverns, and carried on the tongues of rebels across 100 worlds. The story was simple. The Empire had sent its strongest fleet to conquer Earth. And that fleet had lasted only moments. For some, it was impossible to believe. How could one small planet stand against an armada that had crushed empires? But the survivors had returned. Their ships were broken, their eyes hollow, their pride destroyed, and their silence confirmed what no one dared deny. Humanity had defeated the giants. The galaxy listened, and the galaxy remembered. On worlds enslaved by the Empire, people lifted their heads a little higher. In markets where fear once ruled, whispers grew louder. Rebels in the shadows painted Earth's name on their walls. They no longer fought alone. They had proof that the Empire could bleed. And in the halls of the Empire itself, fear spread like poison. The rulers tried to cover the truth. They ordered propaganda, telling their people it had been a tactical retreat, a minor skirmish. But the people did not believe. They had seen the broken fleet with their own eyes. The throne of the Empire trembled. Meanwhile, Earth was silent. Humanity did not boast of its victory. No grand broadcasts were sent. No demands were made. The humans simply returned to their quiet watch, guarding their borders as if nothing had happened. But that silence was louder than any victory song. To the galaxy, it meant one thing: humanity did not fight for glory. Humanity fought only when provoked. And when they fought, they did not lose. Legends began to form. Some said Earth had weapons that could bend space itself. Others claimed their ships could turn invisible, slipping between shadows like ghosts. A few whispered that humanity was not new at all but ancient, an old predator hiding until the right moment. No one knew the truth, and that made the legend even stronger. A smuggler on the outer rim told his crew, "I once heard a survivor speak. He said human ships moved without sound. He said they fired no shots, but fleets crumbled anyway. He said it felt like space itself obeyed them." His crew listened in silence. None dared laugh. Across the stars, the name of Earth became a warning. Do not enter human space. Do not test the humans. Do not wake the predator. Even rival empires who once mocked Earth began to recalculate. Some sent spies, but those spies never returned. Others sent diplomats, offering peace. Slowly, a shift began. The galaxy no longer saw Earth as prey. It saw Earth as something untouchable. In the shadows of human councils, leaders spoke quietly. They did not celebrate the fall of the Imperial fleet. They only reminded each other of a single truth. Humanity did not seek thrones. Humanity did not seek crowns. But humanity would never kneel. The survivors of the Empire lived with nightmares. Many refused to speak. Some could not sleep without hearing the voice that had haunted their fleet. "You should not have come." That voice was now legend. A warning carried from one end of the galaxy to the other. And so the tale grew. Children on distant colonies played games where they pretended to be humans, scaring away imaginary fleets. Merchants swore by Earth's name when making deals. And rebels raised their banners with human symbols, declaring that even the strongest chains could break. For the first time in centuries, the Empire was no longer feared above all. Another name had risen to rival it. Earth. The galaxy had witnessed the fall of giants. And in their place, humanity had stepped into the light, not as conquerors but as legends. The story would echo for generations. Some would believe it, some would doubt. But one thing was certain: no one would ever enter human space again without remembering what had happened there. The legend of Earth had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.